We good? Okay, so last week we left off at sex conduct, you remember? Somebody here? We got 3 people here last week. Were most of you here?
Yes, sir.
And we got some new people. So we'll do a quick review and then get into this because we want to get it. I like to get through step 7. There's a lot of info, believe it or not. In the 6 and 7, there's a lot of stuff to cover. Not by me, hopefully by you. If you remember right, the first week we talked about the problem, the cycle of addiction. We're caught up in this thing. Main problems, the obsession centers in our mind rather than in our body. The only solution to the body is to not use, and we find out we're powerless to keep from using. So we're powerless when we use because the allergy of the body kicks off the physical craving for more, and we're powerless when we're not using. As long as we have this obsession, we're going to use. The time and place will come and you use again. As long as this thing's in my head, I don't care how good you feel right now or how smooth things are going, because they aren't always, they change, don't they? And the only solution we have, that obsession is going to tell us to use. And when we use, I guess we lost a lot of them over the weekend to fentanyl, didn't we? You heard that? I haven't heard any. I've heard a bunch of different numbers. They're so high, I can't believe they're true, but I guess it was bad. So we're powerless and nothing we can do. That's step 1. Step 1 isn't I'm powerless and I need to do something. Step 1 is I'm powerless, period. I don't know what to do because who's running the show in my life? Obsession, and we saw, well, I'll come to that. We found out that the solution offered in the 12 steps of AA is a relationship, a spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, personality change sufficient to recover, all different names, God consciousness, but basically it's going to be a supernatural power that can reach into our mind and expel the obsession to drink. That's what these steps are a roadmap to, is a relationship with God. The fellowship, powerful, brings us together. I hear people talk about all the time, this is a family here, right? That family will not keep you from using it again, period. And if you think it is, you're getting tricked. You're getting fooled. Yeah, it's a good thing, but it will not reach into your mind and remove that obsession. The 12 steps are a road to that relationship with God, who is the only power that can remove that. Now, are there different ways to God? Absolutely. Many, you can try anything you want to. But in this program, step 3 is we make a decision to seek that solution. It's that simple. We aren't making, and here's what I'm hearing. You don't turn anything over in step 3. Nothing changes. In step 3, it's a decision. That's all it is. If you had a broken arm, I know you get tired of hearing that analogy, but if I had a broken arm and I identify the hospital as my solution, and I make a decision to go to the hospital, is my arm fixed? No. What changes? What's changed? Nothing. There's no permanent recovery in the first 3 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And why people teach it, I have no idea. I just don't have any idea. You've ever been to any of those programs that are 1, 2, 3? 1, 2, 3 drinks, what I call them. Yeah, they teach you, they give you the first 3 steps, you worry about it, and you think you're doing something. It's kind of like a lot of people think they're doing something if they're here. There's action required. We found that out when we started step 4. It's kind of like Sam Shoemaker used to talk about, it's like we're all set around a train station. We've been sitting here so long and we hear the places being called out, Philadelphia, New York, Kansas City, all aboard, all of this. We smell the luggage, we get this feeling. We're still sitting at the train station if we don't get on the train. And that's what it's time to do. If you've taken the first 3 steps, it says it's time to get on the train. Because let me think. Go to page 60. Well, first go to the very end of More About Alcoholism. That would be page page is that 43. It's a good review page. I'm going to go up a paragraph just for the heck of it. Doesn't get read very often. Or it says most doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, we assume that's Dr. Silkworth, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there's no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless. 100% hopeless, apart from divine help, apart from a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, apart from the change that's going to happen. Had you offered yourselves to patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I'd been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. May relate to what he's talking about. Some of us had our hearts broken here recently with the little girl that was in the house. It's heartbreaking. It's tough to watch people ignore it and turn their back on it and then go out and die. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in cases such as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. No other solution. So if you want to try another solution, we talked about it. If you want to try something else, go try it and get it over with. If you don't die, come back to the 12 step. Come back and work a program that we know works if you've done it, and we promise you will work if you do it. That's how important it is. Because it gets hard to watch people check out, never knowing where they're going. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Probably we're alcoholic, could not manage their own lives. Remember page 60. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. B, probably no human resource could relieve our alcoholism. And his defense must come from a higher power. C, God could and would if he were sought. So how do I seek? That's it. Circles written. We learned last week. Where did I tell you? 64? Go to 62 first. First paragraph, first full paragraph. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. We learned that obsession, our problem and centers in our mind, our difficulty, they all stem from this thing going on in our heads, because all action's born in thought. And if you have this monster lying to you, has nothing, that cares about nothing than you picking up and using. That's all the obsession cares about. Remember the definition? Thought or idea more powerful than any thought or idea I can have. Always going to be a lie in the area of the first drinking drug, because it's got to tell me I don't have this body, doesn't it? And I got to believe it. And it does not respond to reason. We know that we have all the reasons in the world not to use, and they go out the window when that obsession says it's time. You guys, all of you in here know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure. So we learned that selfishness and self-centeredness are the root of our problem. Okay, we can't see the obsession, can you? You can't see it. Can you see the root of selfishness and self-centeredness? No, not yet at this point. But he said that's the root of our problem. So I turned to page 64 after I made this decision. Therefore, we started on a personal inventory. Before that, he says, though our decision of step 3 was a vital and crucial step, because all actions born in thought, I have to make this decision. If you ever get 1, 2, 3, you got a great gift. It's not going to solve the problem, but you're on your way. If you ever make those 2 mental conclusions and make that decision, you had to find some way to overcome this obsession. Because how many people are sitting here saying, don't pay attention to that. Sit here and listen, nod your head, but don't actually believe it. Yeah, that's what happens. That's what the obsession does. So I just tell people, if you're having trouble with step 1, ask God to show it. Ask God to show you. If you aren't convinced from your own activities, ask God to show you if that's true or not. Where was I? though our decision, a vital, crucial step, have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of. Face and be rid of. Because face doesn't make it, nothing will change. We'll talk about that today. But just facing it doesn't change it. Doesn't make it go away. Face and be rid of the things which had been blocking us. Blocking us from what? God. The solution we're looking for. And we found out when we started on the fourth step. We found out when we started on the fourth step. Last week we talked about resentments. And for those that weren't here, we figured out after we laid it all out, remember we turned the paper sideways, and the root of the resentment is what? Selfish, self-centered. Then we did fears. We inventoried fears, and we found out the root of fear was selfish and self-centered, relying on ourselves. So I'm full of fear, relying on myself, because that's the only way I know. Two types of will, God's will, my will. That's it. You have other people's will, but they don't have anything to do with you, do they? They try to impose their will on us, and we try to impose our will on them, and what happens? Conflict, yeah, to say the least. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. Anybody been married to a selfish person? Anybody not been married to a selfish person? No, never mind. I was thinking of my wife. We have arguments on who's the most selfish. This went on we've been married 25 years in May, but we argued about that for 24 of them. I would say, I'm more selfish. She'd say, no, I am. And finally, this last year, I conceded, you're more selfish.
My next question.
And she acted like she won. I mean, it was amazing. Those of you who know her know it. Can you imagine that conversation? Yeah. So that's where we left it. There's one more category that the book tells us to look at. Now about sex. Page 68, bottom of the page. This is a little different deal than resentments and fears. Because what are resentments about? It's what I'm feeling now, but about something happened in the past, right? Okay. Fears are what I'm feeling now about something I'm afraid is going to happen in the future. Correct? Afraid I'm going to lose something I got. Afraid I'm not going to get something I want. And if I'm relying on myself, be afraid. Be very afraid. And you'll find out, we talked about this, that fear prayer has been so important to me in my life the last 30 years. I mean, I told you last week that I've said it. Every time I say it, it works. And every time it works, I go, man, I can't believe it worked. I'm serious. If you haven't done it yet, you'll know do it. You'll find out what I'm talking about. If you got something coming up and it's fears dominating what you're thinking about, just ask God to remove it and direct His attention to what you'd have you be. And it sounds way too simple, doesn't it? We alcoholics like things to be really complicated. And He didn't give us a spirit of fear. He'll remove that fear. And the thing about it, you probably won't even be aware of it. He does it with me, and I go on about my business and look back hours later, sometimes days later, and go, what happened? I've forgotten I even said it. It just goes. Cannot be explained, has to be experienced. That's what all these steps are. That's why sometimes it feels like you're a struggle to even present this stuff. Because if you don't do it, you'll never know. Talked about that last night. If you don't do it, if you don't take the action, you can't tell me if it worked for you or not. Can you? A lot of people I've heard I may have already said this, but the 12 steps are found difficult. 12 steps are tried and found difficult. I hear that all the time. The truth is, 12 steps are thought to be difficult and not tried at all. How many of us are guilty of that, have been? Yeah, too hard. I'm not doing it. I'm looking for the easier, softer way that the book makes very clear won't work. Don't get me into medically assisted treatment or I'll be in big trouble time this thing gets out. Never mind. Okay, now about sex. We talked about that, about needing an overhauling there. What's an overhauling? You mechanics?
Just completely rebuild.
Completely rebuilt. What do you do when you overhaul an engine? Tear it down first, don't you? And then the good news is, it can be built back up with a change. It's a wholly new thing. We're still the same person, but we need an overhauling in this area. It means to thoroughly change, thoroughly renovate. Everything has to be changed. Okay, we talked about, and we talked about how in 1939, what was good and bad or accepted, not accepted in the area of sex was probably different from 2020. What is this now? 2000. Well, I'm gonna screw that up for about 2 months. It's a different world. Here's the difference. I heard a guy named Clancy Emelson spoke about this on a tape, how it's changed. He said it used to be, and some of you are probably too young to know that, to relate to this. Some of you might, Adam and I might know. But it used to be you'd go to the store and it was like, hey, give me a pack of cigarettes and some condoms. Wasn't it? Remember that? Now you go to the store and it's, hey, give me some of those condoms and a pack of cigarettes. That's the difference. Completely changed.
Nobody uses condoms.
You get the point? Nobody uses condoms. Okay. Yeah, it's too bad.
Our sobriety rate's probably higher.
We found out that God doesn't want, that AA does not want to be the judge of your sex conduct. That was good news, because everybody else has been judging it. That's why we live this double life in a lot of cases. The book says we do not want to be, page 69, we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We all had sex problems in 1939. I wasn't here, believe it or not.
No.
And we all have them today. We do. That doesn't mean sex is going on, but we all have it, this stuff in our lives around us. And it's probably worse today than it was then. So we reviewed our own conduct over the years fast. Now I'm into the directions. How do I do an inventory of my sex conduct? Now here's what's different about this. We're not supposed to have resentments. We're not supposed to have fear. But we're still going to have, the good news is we're still going to have sex conduct according to the book. Some of you have been to programs where they say no sex for a year and no relationships for 2 years, and you get a plant and you get a dog, and I mean, I feel sorry for the dog, but it has all these man-made ideas, and that's not what this book's offering. The book says we're not going to be the arbiter. He said we all have sex problems. What are we going to do about them? The difference is we're still going to have a sex life. That's good news for a lot of people. No, don't stay on track. You guys are, man, it has changed. Yeah, well, I didn't say that. So here's what we do, and it's done, by now we've done resentments. You remember how to do the resentment sheet. And we did fears. That's pretty simple compared to resentments, because it's just a couple, 3 columns in a prayer. Powerful, but it does work. And this one, here's what he says. We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been? Selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. There's a lot of directions there. Okay, what we did on that sheet, Bill's saying the same stuff. He's just laying it out in a different order. But you can freehand this, or you can use one. Does anybody have a sheet on sex conduct? We forgot to get one. But the sheet looks like this. We just took the same, who have I hurt? What did I do? What should I have done? Did I arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Is that right? Yep. Was I? Where was I? Selfish? Dishonest? or inconsiderate. Okay. That's my headings on that sheet. Like I say, use the sheet if you want to, or you can write it out. But here, there's a lot of stuff in there. You think, well, that won't take long. Some of you think that. Here's where I don't care how perverted it was, how sick you think it was, how embarrassing it was. Doesn't matter. When you get that fifth step, you better not leave this stuff out. That one thing, you're free to. You're free to hang on to it if you want to. Keep it a secret. But you got to be willing to pay the price. In this case, the price might be, and probably will be if you're a real alcoholic or a real addict, is death. If you're willing to die for that, hang on to it. But I pray that you don't leave stuff off. Nothing counts but thoroughness and honesty. Don't tell us any of your, I look at you and I go, oh boy.
No, I was working on like who have I heard before, and I put God down there, and it was past responses, how does my conduct hurt God? Could I have myself?
Everything we do against God's will hurts God. David, I don't want to make this a Bible study, but David said, against you and you only have I sinned, and that bugged me to no end. Until I realized that, yeah, even though I hurt that other person, I was also hurting God. Whether I even know God. Just my opinion. Against you and you, I thought, how could he killed a guy, had the woman's husband murdered, got her pregnant because she was hot. I mean, really, that's what it was. And then covered it all up. And was just acting like nothing had happened. And that prophet came in and stuck his finger in his face and said, you're the man. And David said, against you and you only have I sinned. And I go, what's he mean? Sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that. That's a sermon. We're not going to do that. Sorry. I don't want to send anybody out of here screaming. Okay, who do I hurt? That's a key right there. Does it say who have I had sex with? Does it say who have I slept with?
No.
Say who have I hurt with my sex conduct? If you're married, went to the party and flirted with some other guy's wife and pissed your wife off, did you hurt her?
Yes.
With your sex conduct?
Yes.
Wasn't it? You can deny it all you want, but oh, she's just really nice, honey. Yeah. I know how we think, because believe me, and still do.
If you pissed her off, you definitely hurt him.
Yeah, we hurt a lot of people. So it's who I hurt, not who have I slept with. This one's pretty easy. What did I do? You want me to use an example? I can use a bunch of my own, or if somebody else has one, we'll use them. Never mind. Never mind. I got thinking that's probably not a good idea. Here's the point. Okay. Oh, we might as well get it over with. Because I don't think a lot of people are going to top this one. Okay, I was director of another program and ended up it's my fault. I got into an affair with an ex-client half my age. Okay, and ended up resigning. I mean, the whole thing blew up. I mean, it was a complete disaster. I made amends to people who were in that program for 10 years after I left. I finally quit doing it because I thought the statute of limitations has got to be out on this thing by now. The whole program changed over there, and the whole attitude and outlook changed when I left. I did resign to save my marriage, and it worked. It was a good deal. And if it hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here. Okay? So God can take the crappiest things and make them work for good. But I screwed up. So who'd I hurt with my sex conduct? I hurt her. I hurt my wife, her kids, my kids, my grandkids.
Other clients.
Oh, there's a lot. We aren't even getting going good here. My family, wife's family, her family, her boyfriend, my boyfriend. Yeah. If there was one, I'd put it on here. I promise you. Okay, how about How about, how big were we then? 300 clients.
Staff members.
We had about 15 staff members. They all had families.
Yeah.
And they all had families. A lot of these people lost their job because I wasn't there anymore. And there's all families involved here. I figured it out. And then how about all the people that came along behind when that program changed and took a different turn of where to go and how to do things. That might have been better, might have been worse. I don't know. But that changed that. I figured roughly here. Oh, don't forget board members. I was acting national director. That board and all their families and all the other church army things that were going on. I had to just dump them. It was tough. It was awful. Boy, it got really quiet in here now. You thought I was a nice guy, didn't you? All I did was let up in this program of action. That's all I did. And bang. Did I drink over it? No. I don't know how. God's grace is the only thing I can tell you. Because I wanted to and I needed to. I just couldn't. I really don't know. I really can't tell you. God had to do that. So what do you figure here? 1,000? 2,000?
Go 5.
Go 5. What the heck?
Yeah.
Okay. All those people were affected by my single act of selfishness. And don't tell me we're only hurting ourselves. We're adults. We're consenting adults. We're only hurting ourselves. They have a word for that in the Bible. I'm going to be nice since we're recording, but it's, how about dung? Would that be, everybody know what dung is? Bull dung. How's that? Okay, I can say that one. What did I do? I screwed up. Didn't I? What should I have done? Trust God. That's all I had to do. Was I capable of not doing it? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't want to get too deep into that because we get too many other terms, but I screwed up and I should have trusted God. I can give you 1,000 reasons, justifications, all that stuff. They don't mean nothing. They're just excuses. And they aren't very good ones. All justification is just an excuse for why I screwed up. So I can pass the blame on somebody else. Can't do that. When you get this sex conduct, if you ever truly do it, and I'll tell you my first one, it was kind of like a bragging list for my sponsor. What do you think of me now, man? Now, hell, if I'd have had pictures, I would have furnished them. But a couple of years into it, it hit me, and I can tell you I did a real sex conduct, and I was on my knees in tears, crushed by the weight of the people I'd hurt. You get to there eventually. I hope everyone does. I know that doesn't sound like fun, but it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. Does that mean I'm perfect? No. No. But and obviously I wasn't perfect. All I got to do is let up. And he talks about how important this is. Did I arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Can I just write duh? Yeah. And here's the deal. Who was I thinking of? Anybody else? Her? No way.
You think about you think about yourself.
I was thinking about, say it. Who said that? I was thinking about me and nobody else. That's what our sex conduct does. God gives us sex conduct. It's good. There's a reason. I mean, He gave it to us. He's not going to condemn it. He created it. He made it. Think about that. God doesn't want to see it ugly. What is ugly when we try to manage our own lives on a selfish basis. And then dishonest. You think we're not like cats covering up poop when we screw up, aren't we? Yeah. Inconsiderate. You think think any of these people cross my mind at all? No. They can't. And that's what happens when you're running life on self. And all I had to do that was to quit praying, quit thinking of others, think only of myself, and bang. So that's about as ugly as I know. You know, I've had ones I've had some others too, back in the day. I was pretty bad. But the root of that is always going to be me. Now remember when we learned the root of resentments and fears? Now we can see that the harm our sex conduct does, we heard others, our sex conduct is the root of selfishness. Selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of our problem. 3 common manifestations of self is what we inventory. Resentments, fear, and sex conduct. Manifestation of this selfish nature in me that grows out of that. And this is how it shows up. And I know if you're like I was, you think, well, there's got to be a bunch of others. You know what? You do a big book 4-step, and they're all covered. Everything is covered if you're honest and thorough about it. It'll all come under one of those 3 areas. And I don't know how they knew this, because I read this first time. I thought, well, there's got to be this, there's got to be that. But they all fell in somewhere. Pretty amazing. Let's finish up on sex. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. In most of our cases, that'll be the first sane and sound ideal we've ever had in this area. Isn't it? Yeah. Tell me how you can be unselfish and hurting people in your sex conduct. I'm still waiting to hear that one. And sex conduct can be thinking it. I used to think that was crazy. But it can be, because that's going to affect the next thing I do, isn't it? Might be, but it's going to affect me if I'm capture those thoughts, okay? We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We don't want to do that, do we? Because this scenario causes, this is a powerful instinct that God's given us. They say it's more powerful than our need for food and water sometimes. You know, we'll run through doors, you know, and everyone has sex problems. But the animals don't have this. Why? Have you anybody ever seen seen a dog in divorce court? No? No? Has anybody ever seen the police called to a domestic dispute between 2 dogs? No? Just people. It's just us. And we can cause so much damage in this area if you haven't done it yet. And if you do this inventory, you might see some that you've caused and don't even realize it. Very, very touchy area, especially to new people. We ask God, here's our prayer. We ask God, I was trying to cover that up so I don't have to look at him more. We ask God to do what? Mold our ideals and then help us live up to them. We ask God to change our thinking in the area of sex and then give us the power to live up, to be obedient to that thinking. That help? Understand what he's getting at here? We ask God to take our thinking in this area and then give us the power to obey those new thoughts. Because we can't just keep going through life hurting people. Can't do it. I don't know how some people, I see it sometimes by people that call themselves alcoholics, and I got to go, what's up with that? Because they're hurting people intentionally, and I go, they're either not alcoholics or they're using something on the side. It's got to be one of the two, because there's no way you can keep hurting people and not use. You'll find that out if you haven't experienced and haven't done it already. We ask God to help us mold our ideals and live up to them. Remember, our sex powers were God-given and therefore good. God created sex for his purpose. Trouble is, we want to run the show. Selfishly, if we don't have any reliance on God, we can only rely on who? Ourself. And this selfish thinking leads to selfish actions. And we don't care who it hurts. I know this isn't real upbeat. It wasn't much fun as last week, was it? We did that prayer. Whatever ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward. There's that word again. Man, that's in here a lot, isn't it? Willing. Why is willing so important?
You gotta want it.
Yeah, because if I'm not willing, God can't do it. If I'm willing, he can do anything. I say whatever. And we don't like to be told what to do we? Whatever we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we've done harm. That's a long list, guys. I made most of them. I even was able to make some board members this year when I went back to Virginia where a lady lives. And she was the only national board member I hadn't got to make the amends to. And that was kind of a good feeling. And she said, "Oh, we forgave you a long time ago." And I said, "I know, but you got to understand, I need to do this." Humbling still. Provided we don't bring up more harm in doing so. Keep that in mind. We can't, you can't hurt people. You got to stop hurting others. And that's a big switch for some of us. It was for me. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. I love this. The right answer will come if we want it. Okay, God does not, our meditation with God should not be, here's what I'm going to do, and ask for his stamp of approval. Good thinking, Steve. Man, I'll screw that up. That's not what God's for. I don't plan my day. I don't plan my sex conduct or my life and ask God to put his stamp of approval on my plans. This is about asking him to run my life. What should I do? Take my thinking, take my action, especially in this area, because Bill knows it wasn't going to work. Remember, we made a decision back in step 3 to quit playing God. That includes in our sex life. This is a big change, guys. In fact, it sounds impossible, doesn't it? Some of us, it did me when I was sitting where you are. It sounded like there's no way. God doesn't understand me. Think that one through. Let's keep going. Oh, I love this one. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with others. This is one we're good at. This is where we're ready to counsel with others. Counsel with others is often desirable. We let God be the final judge. Here's why counsel with others is dangerous. We realize some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. What I see happen is this. Somebody's been here 2 months. In comes a redhead newcomer. I'm not picking on redheads.
Right.
Not picking on redheads. There's an old line about in walked a redhead, out walked sobriety. I'm not picking on you though. But the point is, where does all that I gave my life to God go when she walks in?
Straight out the window.
Yeah, it's like our mind, girls, same thing with you. Just everything's gone. This is a powerful instinct. And we go to our sponsor and he says, I think this is God's will. Our sponsor says, "You're an idiot. Leave her alone." So we go, well, I got to get some counsel with others. And we keep going till we find a guy that came in 20 minutes after she did and said, I think we're a good hookup pair. And he says, "Go for it, man." And I go, there you go. I got to counsel with others. Don't do that. I give counsel all the time. You know what most people do? Okay, and then go do whatever they're going to do. And you know what happens? They get drunk. And they die. I watch it around. It's like watching a car wreck that takes 3 weeks to happen. No, it is. You watch them over here. You watch here, and you start to see them, and here comes the wreck, and bang. And usually it's one or both end up gone. And I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I can't tell you how many recoveries have been destroyed in this area. I mean destroyed. Some of them die. If she's worth it, you got to pay the price. If he's worth it, you got to pay the price. If you're willing to die for that hot young man, then you don't know the depth and weight of your problem. And I guarantee you, a relationship with another person is not a relationship with God, and it's not going to solve your problem. It's going to make them worse. Enough lecture. I know what you're thinking. That old bastard, but he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, I do. I have a memory. I'm not dead. Just old. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. What's that mean? We screw up.
Right. Daily.
Does it mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but it's only a half truth. Depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry, if we realize we've made a mistake, if we're sorry for what we have done, and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and we will have learned our lesson. But I watch people go through this, and they do it over and over and over, and they can't stay sober, and they come to me and say, I don't understand, I'm working this program. No, your significant other is not God. And what happens so much in this case is you get involved with somebody, and that action, that activity, that sexual activity, makes you one in a way. Now, I'm not going to give a bunch of spiritual lectures, but pretty soon, God's out the window, and she's your God. I'm watching people right now who are not going to make it because they're here to get their wife back or get their girlfriend back or to please, and they're not going to make it because they're that other person they're hooked up with is God in their lives. Which is more important, God or her or him? He's the one who removes the obsession. They can't. And look at this is why you do a 4-step on your sex conduct. You should see a pattern here. How many, and I watch people who do this, they look at it and say, man, I'm never doing that again. And 20 minutes later, they're doing it again. God can, only God can stop you. But if you're going to screw up, it's what Bill says. You're probably going to screw up. You're not going to be perfect. But if you screw up, and here's my greatest hope, my prayer for you. If you screw up, I hope you're frickin' miserable. I hope it's the worst sexual experience you ever had in your life. I'm not kidding. It's that important whether you live or die. It's that important. Here's what he says. If we're not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we're quite sure to drink. He says it's not a theory. They're facts out of our experience. They're facts out of my experience too. There's a godly sorrow that leads to repentance, and then there's sorry I got caught. And if you're just sorry you got caught, you're going to do it again. And if you do it again, eventually, and not only are you going to hurt yourself, think all the other people you're hurting when you do it. That's what the purpose of this is to keep you from repeating this. To see it before us in black and white and realize how many people we were. Boy, it sure got quiet in here. How come nobody's cracking up now? To sum up about sex, pray for the right ideal and guidance in each questionable situation. For sanity, that's a good prayer. Because I've seen people go insane in this area, haven't you? I mean, I watched people at the New Year's Eve party spent the whole night like this, FaceTiming. The whole entire time.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, the party was great. It's crazy. But I'm not God. Even though we think so sometimes, right? We earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, sanity, and the strength to do the right thing. God, take this thinking, take control of my thinking, and that'll take control of my actions. But if I'm still based on selfish thoughts, I'm going to have selfish actions. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to keep hurting people. And if you know the depth and weight of your problem, you're going to die. That's what this is about. When this book was written, you had 20 or 30 years of hard drinking before you got really sick and died. Women had about half that much. It's in the book. Don't look at me that way. But today it's not like that. Today you can do that and, hey, I got a new honey. And she says, you don't have my honey. Well, and how do we handle that? What's our only way we know to handle it? Yeah. What did they call that yesterday? A bean?
Yeah, bean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't laugh at it.
I was fascinated. I didn't know what it was.
That's what a capsule is.
But I do a fentanyl.
That's beans.
Somebody gives me fentanyl.
But you overdose.
Then I won't worry about how I feel about that, will I? The trouble is now, That ain't a shot of whiskey. That's a death. That's death on instant. I mean, this world's getting crazier and crazier. And like we said, the same guy that uses that obsession's in charge of this mess. And we're just getting sucked right into it. And I'm watching people die, and it's just breaking my heart, killing me. Okay, we've been thorough about our personal inventory. We've written down a lot. Well, here, I better not back. He says, if sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We cannot be unselfish and selfish at the same time. You can't do both. You can be unselfishly acting, or selfishly acting unselfishly, but I'm saying really go in and help somebody. How many of you have had problems and all of a sudden some guy came up and needed help with something? And you got going on that and you forgot all about your crap for a while, didn't you?
It helps more than anything.
So it still works. 80 some years old. We think of their need and work for them. This takes it out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge. That's the, and I guarantee there's people in this room right now, I call it fiddling. Boy, he's cute. Fiddle, 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 fiddle. She's hot. Fiddle, 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 fiddle. What do you think of her? Fiddle, fiddle, fiddle. And it's going on. You keep fiddling, sooner or later you're going to play. By the way, you know how to tell when a fiddle's out of tune? They start playing. I'm not a big fan of the fiddle. No. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. J.M. Barrie, no, it wasn't J.M. Barrie. Yeah, it was. J.M. Barrie, the guy that wrote Peter Pan. Anybody heard of Peter Pan?
Yeah.
Nobody's read the book. I'm sure some of you saw the movie. You read it? All right. A reader. I like that. Okay. You probably read it too, haven't you? No. Okay. The guy that wrote that also wrote this. He said this about the 4 steps. He said, every one of us start out with a story we intend to write. We have a story of our lives we're intending to write, don't we? He said, and it's the most humbling moment is when we look at the story we've written and compare it with the story we intended to write.
Wow.
That's what the 4 steps about. It should be humbling. It shouldn't be, hey, look at me. For me, it was a shocking I became aware of why I was so angry all the time. I became aware of why I felt guilty even though I shouldn't. I thought I told myself I shouldn't feel guilty. I found out that I was afraid of everything, but I had on this macho attitude that said, I'm afraid of nothing, right? But inside, it was killing me. Well, I find out that, and here's what the important thing I found out were my shortcomings, my defects of character, the selfishness, the dishonesty, the inconsiderate, these manifestations of self. If somehow this was different, where's resentments go? If somehow I could be unselfish and God-centered, what's going to happen to my resentments? I'm not going to have any. It's God's world. If I'm relying on God, where's my fear going to go? Now, it sounds like, if you haven't done this for a while, it sounds like he's some supernatural boogaloo. It's not. It's real. It works. Am I going to keep hurting people if I'm relying on God to run my life in that area? So, but nothing's changed yet, has it? Look over, real quick, look over on page, I covered up my page, 71. Oh my goodness. A lot of Steve in here today. We hope you're now convinced God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. You can't do it by yourself. God has to do it. And you think that sounds impossible. Yeah, I know it's going to sound impossible. With God, it's not impossible. But you're never going to do it till you ask. You're never going to know if it's impossible or not until you ask Him. If you've already made a decision, back on page 63, it says in step 3, it says, be careful because this is only a decision. It says we made a good beginning. It said this decision is a good beginning. In an inventory of your growths or handicaps, it just says a beginning. And on this page it says step 4 is a good beginning. Nothing changes. You're not recovered. Nothing has changed. You're just aware of your need for help more than you were. Page. Shoot. Break. I'm serious. How many of us need our egos boosted?
Not me.
I don't. No.
I need humbled daily.
Now, step four is not an ego booster, and if you think that one's tough, take a look at page 72.
I've been reading the 12 by 12 and step 7 is
Oh.
all in humility.
That'll make you crazy.
Yeah.
Having made our personal inventory, what do we do about it? What are we going to do about this? Nothing changed here. We made a good beginning. We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with God to discover obstacles in our path. We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is, selfishness. We have put our finger on the weakest items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. That's pretty good news. If you want to applaud for something, applaud for that. They're about to be removed. Removed, cast out.
Steve, what's ascertain mean? I don't know. Water.
Figured it out. This requires action on our part, which when completed, we will have admitted to God, to ourselves, and other human beings the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the fifth step in the program recovery mentioned in the preceding chapters. 3 things: admit to God, to ourselves, and another human being. When we admit to God, we've accepted the fact, after you've seen this, if you've got a big ego after doing your own 4 steps, then you probably need to take a hard look at it. If you're a better person than you thought you were, I doubt if you were thorough and honest, okay? Because it's a humbling thing to look at. So I have to, and all admitting to God is saying, I agree with you. I've seen it myself on paper in black and white. And when I confess to God, I agree with you, and He requires that. Everything you ever read about God, He wants that confession to Him. Against you and you only have I sinned. I've screwed up. I've been wrong. And that's all He wants to hear. He already knows it. There's nothing on your 4 step that God doesn't, that God went, oh, I didn't know about that deal. You know, He didn't look over the edge of heaven and say, I can't believe Brian did that. He already knew. He already knows. It's about us agreeing with God, about saying, you're right. Your way was right and my way is wrong. And I agree, and I screwed up. But this is perhaps difficult. What's the difficult? It's that third part, discussing our defects with another person. This is the one that's a mountain to climb for us, isn't it? We think we've done well admitting these things to ourselves. There's doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. How many of us have lied to ourselves? Who hasn't lied to themselves? It's kind of like, well, I think I got this. I don't really need to share it with anybody. It won't work. You're working a different program. As soon as you do that, you're working a different program. You're no longer willing to go to any lengths. In fact, you're still playing God, aren't you? You're working a different program. Deviations, penalty for deviations, sure and swift. We sicken and die. So you can do whatever you want to. Nobody's making you do this, but this is a way that works, and these people know from experience it works. And I can tell you by following these actions, haltingly, poorly, the best I could, far from being perfect or following them exactly, they still work. They still work. It's the effort it's the effort I made that's important. Many of us thought it necessary to go much farther. We will be more reconciled discussing with ourselves when we see good reasons why we should do so. Best reason first, we're going to get drunk. That's why. That's a pretty good reason. If we skip this step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, the newcomers have tried to keep with themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Remember back in the 4th step? When you get to the 5th step, and if you're one of these people going, man, I'm not going to tell them about that. I just can't do it. I didn't put it on my 4th step, which I should have, and I'm certainly not going to tell anybody. You can do that. But it says, He's already given us a way out of that if you're stuck in that spot. Remember back in the fear? When you inventoried the fear? Why do you have the fear? Who are you relying on?
Yourself.
yourself. So what do we do with that fear? We've already learned what to do. Ask God to remove our fear and direct His attention to what He'd have us do. And He says you admit to another person. Confess to another person. And you think, why should I do that? What's that difference that going to make? That's what I thought. It makes all the difference there is. I'll show you. Having persevered, Kenny, that means having done the rest of it correctly.
I really didn't do it like that.
Okay.
Set me out like that, bro.
No, any big words, I'm just going to make sure you know. With the rest of the program, they wonder why they fell. Kenny said, I've never asked another question in this class as long as I live. That, you know how long that'll last? About 4 minutes. Well, you should be able to do it. You were 10-11 last night. You should just use it on there.
Tonight I'm gonna have to do a step 10 on you, Steve.
Yeah, we used to print 4-step sheets that had a guy's name in the first column because we knew everybody. No, well, yeah, it could be. They took inventory all right, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they'd lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves. Where's the main problem center? Where do I think? Don't trust your thinking. Nothing's changed yet. You're still going to try to trick yourself. You're still going to be believing your own lies. They have not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they tell someone else. Look what he put in parentheses there. Squiggly writing. All their life story. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He's very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is one he likes fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but he knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he's revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him as fast as he can. He pushes these memories far inside himself, stuffing them. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is look at this. He's under constant fear and tension. Fear blocks us from God. You've got to get this off your chest. You got to get it out. And this book is the best way to do it. In fact, turn back to page, I can't remember, 21. I think. I'll show you something, how important this is. Right in the middle page, and we didn't touch on this, says, here's the fellow's been puzzling you, especially his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He's a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Does anybody know that story? Dr. Jekyll, good guy, well thought of. This is a short story written in 1886 by a man named Robert Louis Stevenson. Some of you might know him from Treasure Island. He had some other ones too, but Treasure Island was probably his biggest one. But The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde told the story of this Dr. Jekyll, who was well thought of, had a wonderful fiance, a respected gentleman. This is in about 1880s, I think is when it was written. And he's a Victorian gentleman. I don't see any in here, but you get the idea. He's well thought of. Okay. And he invented a drink, a potion. And he drank this potion. And it changed his whole personality. It even changed his physical appearance. He would look different when he was on the potion, when he was drinking the potion. He would get mean and hated. And he hated everybody. He was angry. He was full of this rage. And it just was, but it would wear off and he'd be back to being Dr. Jekyll. But this Mr. Hyde was taking on his own personality. I'm not going to get too far into the story, but Jekyll even left everything into Hyde in a will. That's how sick this was. And it keeps going, and finally Jekyll quits. He says, I gotta quit. And he stopped. No more Mr. Hyde. No more bad guy. Because this guy would rob, steal, beat people up. Bad dude. And then he went a few months. No problem. But then he just couldn't keep from picking it back up again. And he picked up that potion and drank it, and Mr. Hyde came back in all his glory, only it wasn't better, it was worse. And finally it got to a point where Hyde actually committed murder. And Jekyll came to and vaguely remembered all this stuff. And it got so bad for the Jekyll, he couldn't stand it, and he kept drinking the potion until he actually became Mr. Hyde and overdosed on the potion and died as Mr. Hyde. Sounds like us, maybe? Now gets better. Robert Louis Stevenson was well documented as an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. And he wrote that story.
I think it was about self.
I think it was a lot about self. And if it wasn't about self, it could have been about me. We turn into a different person, don't we? Back to page 73. Is that where we were? Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations, or our insurance did in some cases. We know but few instances where we're giving these doctors a fair break. We seldom told them the whole truth, or have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with we couldn't follow their advice, could we? The obsession says, yeah, you need to do that. No. You nod your head and agree, and then adios. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and addicts and their chance to recover. The 3 reasons why doctors don't work for us. Okay? First reason is we lied to them. We don't tell them the truth. How much you man, this guy's saying, I don't want to die, and I trust you to help me not to do that. That should be like, wow. I should feel like I'm chosen. Instead of like, oh God, another fifth step. And really, if you're a good fifth step partner, there's nothing on there that's going to shock you. I've heard enough of them that I always say there's nothing I haven't done, wished I'd have done, or wished I'd even thought of. You guys, these new wave of alcoholics and addicts are a lot smarter than I was. I'll explain that to you later. I guess that didn't go very well. We pocket our pride and go to it. Illuminating. What's illuminating? Shine a light on it. Illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the path. These are promises if you'll do that. Withholding nothing. Whoops. Wow. Once we difficulties. What it removes a lot of times is the emotional tension about it. You'll feel such a relief emotionally. Some of the stuff you've been hauling around in a suitcase on your back for 20 years and 30 years will fall away, and you'll be like, oh. In a new surrender. That's not the emotional tension, is the selfishness and self-centeredness and these resentments and this fear and this, all this stuff we've identified must be gathered up in a new act of the will and offered to God in a new surrender. And that's what we're getting ready to do in 6 and 7. Don't be satisfied with 5 because not chances are, the book says it won't last. Tom, did you have something?
So would that kind of be like in causes and conditions, how the causes get better, or the conditions get better, but we're still left with the root cause of it?
Yeah. It's kind of like having a broken arm. You went to the hospital and got another, what do they give for pain? OxyContin. Let's go for the glory.
Yeah, I might as well.
You gave me another OxyContin. Arm doesn't bother me today. As long as I got one every what do you need those? Every hour?
Yeah.
I wasn't a tablet guy. I'm not a good
One every hour? Ooh.
If I couldn't drink, if they said don't drink with them, I thought I'm gonna get some of those. Those might work. That's why I wasn't pills.
Did you roll on myself?
Well, muscle relaxers are great if you can drink a quart of scotch. They work really well. First you had to take the whole bottle. Never mind. What are we doing? Returning home. Okay, we just did our 5th step. I got this feeling. We woke our sponsor up, and we woke our 5th step partner up, said, I'm done. Because that's really, that guy's just listening, okay? He's not judging. He better not be judging you. He's not judging. He's just listening. And here's the thing. If you're a 5th step partner, it doesn't hurt to tell them, I'm a screw up too. Let me tell you about some of the stuff I
or I remember my sponsor, I was weeping, talking about getting in a fight with my wife. And he said, I'll never forget what he said, he goes, "You only hit her once?" Now, I don't know if it's true of him or not, but it made me feel a lot better. It did. It was like, man, I'm not the only one that does this. No, you're not. That stuff we think we're so exclusive to us is straight out of hell, that thought is. The sounds of alcohol and addiction are breaking furniture and breaking bones and breaking cars and all that. That's just the sounds that go along with it. And the point is, we can't live that way anymore. We don't have to live that way anymore. We're given a way out if we just do this. I know it's easier said than done, and it is. But it's found difficult and not tried at all. Too many cases. If you got a better way, go for it. But this way, I know, I absolutely guarantee it will work. Got an hour now. Second time element. First time element was when?
Third step.
Good job. Somebody got it. First time element was
Next.
made a decision, next, at once, we're supposed to do a fourth step. He's telling me when to do it. Now he's telling me I'm done with my fifth step. Returning home, we find a place where we be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart, we know him better. If you're just sitting there hearing this and you haven't done it, that sounds like blah, blah, blah. But if you've done it, and you're doing this, when you get to this point, you'll be thanking God for that relief you're feeling. That's what it is. That emotional tension will be gone. And I can't explain it, it has to be experienced. But those that have done it know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah.
We thank God from the bottom of our heart, we know him better. Know him better. We still don't know him yet. We just know or learn about him. Take this book down from our shelf. That's always like that. We turn the page which contains the 12 steps. What page is that? Page 59. Most of them are there. First, 11 are there, or 10. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we omit anything for building arch which walk free mind. So I go back through one. You know, do I see the truth in this? Do I know I have this obsession, have no chance against? Do I know I have an allergy and I can't safely drink? Do I know about the cycle? Am I willing to believe that God can change that in that area? Am I truly willing to believe that? Obviously I am. You know how I know you're willing? Because you're already up through step 5. But you got to take a look. Am I really willing to believe that this can change? Have I really made that decision to seek that relationship that the book says I have to have? That conscious contact, that spiritual awakening, all that stuff. Have I really made that decision? Have I left anything off this inventory? This is where you'll find out. I remember one guy, nope, I'm not gonna go there, we're running out of time. Oh, it's pretty easy. This guy I kept saying, "You sure you didn't do something else? You sure you didn't?" I said, "Okay, then go next door and take a shower." And he went next door, and about 2 minutes later, he came back in and said, "All right, you son of a, you know what? I'll tell you." Guy's still sober. That was about 11 years ago. But he was mad. God, he was mad at me. He says, "How'd you know?" And it was ugly stuff. I don't blame you for leaving it up. We ask ourselves, did I hold something back in step 5? If I can say I didn't, then I'm ready for the big thing. Remember back on page 64, the purpose of steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. Purpose of this inventory to begin with: face and be rid of. I'm done with the facing. I did 4, wrote it down, confessed it, self-examination, confession. That's the face, the truth. This is who and what I am apart, running my own life. This is my best shot at running my own life. This is the best I've done. Now, I'm ready for the be rid of. That's the cool part. That's the jewels in the crown, the icing on the cake. This makes it all worthwhile. And you know what? You likely will not have any emotional experience from it. Likely. Not always. Some of you will. I didn't. I had nothing. I was like, guess that didn't work. I took the hour. Actually, I took about 7 minutes. Busy. So I say, you're not gonna do it perfect. Don't take 7 minutes, because I said that, I don't know what it was. I basically had to go back and do it right. Turn your book to page 76, and there's 2 little paragraphs on 2 steps. Can you imagine? I mean, step 4 took 2.5 hours. 2 paragraphs. Someone asked Diane, how come there's not much written about step 6 and 7? I can tell you right now, of all the steps, step 6 and 7 cannot be explained. They have to be experienced. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try to see what the book says. But it ain't gonna work, because it's not gonna mean anything to you until you actually do it. And then you go, I can't explain it, but wow. I can't explain it, but something changed. And it may not happen in 7. So you took your hour, you got up, you're gonna do step 6. If we can answer to our satisfaction, and we have to leave anything out in the first 5 steps, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things we admitted are objectionable? Are we now ready? You know what the answer to that is? You'll always say, yeah, man, I'm ready. And you're not. My experience. You're not. Neither was I. Nobody is. We've been running our life on our own 40 years, 30 years, 12 years. Whoever, however long. And it's not gonna, you want it to just, wow, I want to be fixed overnight. I want the burning bush. I want the zap job. I want this done with. If God chooses that, good for you. But chances are he's not going to. Can he now take them all, every one? That's a silly thing, isn't it? He's God. He can do anything, right? Can he take them?
Yeah.
Yeah. But for some reason, he wants us. He wants us to offer them. Can he take them? Absolutely. But he wants us to say, please take these. You'll have to ask God if you don't understand that. I don't either. Sometimes he just wants our participation. He can do it instantly, perfectly, in a blink of an eye. And he wants us involved, so it takes a lot longer. But if he did it instantly in the blink of an eye, we wouldn't get nothing. We wouldn't learn nothing. Would we? All our answers would be, hey, what'd you do? I don't know. God just took it. Hope he does it for you. Adios. Great message, huh? I've heard that. You know what? They're not impressed. I'm not impressed because nobody tells me how to do it. The greatest thing about this, it tells me how. I've been walking this way for so long. How do I turn and walk the other way? We can't change ourselves. I think we got to finally admit that. I've given up on changing myself, which is what we have to do. So God does it for us. So I've been walking this way now. It's going to all change. It's going to change in just about as soon as we get here. This is to be rid of, remember? Can he now take them all, every one? Am I willing to let him have this? No. If we still cling to something, we'll not let go, which likely we are. We ask God to help us to be willing. We ask God to help. And what would stuff like that look like? Girls, you got kids? You ready to put them ahead of God? Are you ready to put God ahead of them? Because they've always been ahead of God, haven't they? You got a relationship that's just too important, you couldn't trust that with God, could you? How about your money? Okay, God, you know what we want here, if you're like I am, I want God to remove my alcoholism and addiction. I want him to remove that obsession and make my life tolerable. But I don't want to give anything up, man. Yeah, I want him to remove my selfishness and these resentments, but I want to hang on to the things I think are good. And man, she's good. Back on page, I always go back to page 64. I'm not going to make you turn there. But it says, above everything, we must be rid of the selfish. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. There's no way of entirely getting rid of self. Is that stuff you're hanging on to selfish? Is hanging on to your kids selfish? Yeah, it is, but that's what we do. Is hanging on to that relationship selfish? You can hang on to anything you want to, but you've got to be willing to die for it. It's not just about the bad things we're hanging on to. We want rid of those. But we're not talking about a little tune-up here. We're talking about a changed life. And it says God has to come above everything. We have to be rid of this stuff. Kids, that doesn't mean, it means I'm gonna trust God with my kids, because I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't done that great a job to begin with. I've made a lot of mistakes. I did. Relationships, you're gonna trust God with your job. I just got a great job, and I have to trust God. Yep. God comes first. And this is where you make that choice. This is where you make that decision. Is God gonna be first, or is he just gonna be part of my life? Because that's not what he wants. Pervasiveness of this thing. You know, here's what we want to do right here. And I'm not saying you're bad or something wrong with this, because it's natural. It's our nature. But here's my life, right? Almost a circle. And what do I have in my life? I got job's part of my life. Family's part of my life. Recreation. Drugs have been part of my life. Maybe church is part of my life. You know, what people are having in their heads is right now they're gonna make God part of their life. That's not what God's saying. God's saying, I am your life. I am all that stuff's gonna go with me, and I'm gonna remove everything that's bad for you. I'm gonna remove this idea of who and what I am. If your family's getting in the way, it may come between you and your family. You gotta decide. This is where, and chances are, we're not gonna be willing. Money. You know, it's funny, we'll trust God with eternity. Yeah. But we won't trust him with our money. We'll trust God with, if I'm trusting God, am I gonna get the bad relationships? Am I hanging on to it bad? I can't let go. If I still cling to something or not let go, this is the only place that we are hanging on. All the rest of it, this addiction has a hold of us. But we just won't hang on, we won't let go of that stuff. This isn't just phone numbers to take out of your phone. This is your very life. Is there something you're holding back that you don't want God to have? So it's not as simple as it sounds. Am I convicted? That's really what this is. There's a religious term called conviction, and this is where that happens. Has step 4 in life convicted me of my need for God to run my life because I can't do it myself? Is that the truth or not? And if you're convicted, if you go to court and you get convicted, what follows conviction? Sentencing, right? You got to pay a price for those mistakes. This is what cool is. I love this God guy. Look what he does. Here's your sentence. Step 7. When ready, we say something like this. It's a prayer, another prayer. My God, my Creator, I'm now willing you should have all of me, good and bad. Don't worry about I shouldn't say stupid. Don't worry about your asset list. God knows your assets. Chances are you don't. All of me, good and bad. What's left? They got any neutral stuff? It's all of me. Good, all the good, all the bad. You get it all, God. I'm giving it all to you. I'm offering it all to you in this surrender. I pray you now remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you or my fellow man. It's not about me anymore. If I say this prayer, every defective character which stands in the way of useless to you and my fellows, grant me strength. Give me the power as I go out from here to do your bidding. You're not going to an auction. Bidding is God's will. We say it all the time in our program, don't we? I want to do what God wants me to do. And I can't do it if I'm blocked off with all this stuff. He wants to remove it. Do I want it? Do I want to stay the way I am, or am I willing to let him change me? Because this is where it happens. Now, chances are you may not. If you're like me, you got up and went, nothing happened. But what did happen is all of a sudden my thinking changed. My actions change, and my words change. And there's sometimes I'd say something and turn around and see who said it. Because I thought, that didn't come from me. This is where the miracle begins. It's where it happens. This is where we can face and be rid of all that stuff blocking from God. And notice here, that prayer on step 7. Notice it says amen. See it? What's amen mean?
Agree.
Close?
So be it.
Okay. Yeah, truth.
Look back on page 63 real quick. I'll show you something. May have seen or may not have seen. Remember how we started this whole journey? Getting ready to do step 4 and taking the action? God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. 3rd step prayer, right? What? It ends like this. Take away my difficulties, victory, and bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. I do thy will always. No amen. How come? Because that's the beginning. Because that was the beginning. You made the decision to quit playing God. He said the prayer, God, I need your help because I can't do this myself. And he guided us through a 4th step and a 5th step. We got done with the 5th step and we took an hour. And then we identified what we're probably hanging on to. And if you don't, just say, I want this. Help me to be willing. Nothing can be more important. And then I asked him to change me. Remove all this stuff that blocked me from him. So I could be in relationship with him. I could have conscious contact that start and grow and begin. And my life could be changed by him, not by my actions. And then I start out like a little kid, barely can walk, learning to walk, and I'll make a lot of mistakes. But the point is, you no longer are doing it by yourself. You no longer have to run your own life and run your own show. And this is where normally I would stop, but we're filming this thing, so we're gonna stop here for the day. But until you do this, the rest of these steps make no sense at all until you take the action. So if you're stalling around doing your 4th and 5th, do it. Nothing's gonna change if you take the action. I guess we're done. God bless.